Seldom.
Hello and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, and Wrestling Premier photographer Mike Leno and effervescent Evan Ginsberg. So, all right, now, since there was plenty of pre-show talk, I was going to say save it for the show. Actually, last week I did mention to you guys about my shoulder surgery, which has been successful, so that's great, except that, I'm not going to be doing any powerbomb moves on anybody or right-handed clotheslines on anybody off the ropes. Not that I have been of recent, but I did in April fall and severely destroy my right shoulder. So it was all fully replaced by Nevada Community Hospital, which is now my second major joint replacement. But it's a good thing they're in the top 50 of America's joint replacement hospitals because I'm a frequent shopper over there.
Do you get points?
Yeah, exactly. Well, considering all the times I've been there, I thought that maybe they
you get a free one after 5 surgeries.
Yeah, or maybe their emergency room might start having an express lane just for myself because I do live right across the freeway.
That is serious. There is some serious rehab and stuff you got to do, right?
But it's going very well, and I'll be high-fiving people probably in another couple months. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, guys, let's talk about, first of all, you guys watched the AEW pay-per-view, at least part of it. What were you guys' impressions on it?
I've watched the whole thing very quickly because I'll let Evan talk more about it, but I went in going in thinking the majority of the matches were Dynamite, Wednesday night TV stuff. It wasn't, they're not, there's no Kenny Omega. He's going to return instead at the Tokyo Dome show, the second night of Wrestle Kingdom, that is sort of like Forbidden Door is for AEW, but there wasn't Okada on the pay-per-view. A lot of the matches, but the match ended up being fine. It was Mercedes Moné's very best match in AEW so far. She has not been impressive. The heat she's had. I mean, Tony Khan brought her in. She's supposed to be a face, and the fans started booing her because she started to do her annoying WWE dancing as Sasha Banks and all of that. So she did have an excellent match, even though she kept her title. And they really rushed her valet, Camille, which is a shame because Camille was the longest reigning. Billy Corgan ended up being women's champions to date since the promotion started, and is an outstanding wrestler. And she looks like shit, for lack of a better word. Like showing her ass in terms of runaway heat and not being used effectively as a monster heel like China. That was the initial thing when she first came out. The first few weeks was the bodyguard for Mercedes Moné, formerly Sasha Banks. And we thought, okay, great. She'll get a big rub on a more national show than Corgan's NWA. But, having her get beaten up by smaller people and it's been sort of a debacle. So I was looking for, they're doing the quick turn, so she'll eventually turn babyface Camille because is becoming very Trump-like, dictator-like, and ordering her around and slapping her and telling her to stay back and catering and all that crap.
Do you think it's going to work?
So,
do you think making her face is going to...
No, I think it's they need to get poor Camille off of and away from Moné and to do her own stuff and to build her back up. They're going to have to start from scratch because she was this killer heel. And then, one of her things was she had super long hair, and for no reason, she just shows up on TV, and now it's cut shoulder length, and it's no longer red. It's just the natural brown color. And they've completely effed up with her, sadly, sort of the way they've done with Wardlow on 4 occasions. They keep trying to bring him back, and they screw it up. The other thing I didn't like about the pay-per-view, and there were good matches. I mean, it was enjoyable. I didn't care for the New Jersey Rizzler stuff. I don't know. Evan can talk about that. Evan, you said you hadn't even heard of those guys. That guy that's a TikTok sensation who was a wrestler 20 years ago, and he comes out with his 2 sons and does all this white man's poor rap shit.
Sensation, I think you lost half the audience because I think half our audience doesn't even know what TikTok is.
Well, that was the main event for the free pre-show, which was nuts because it was kind of meaningless. But they're doing the WCW thing now, which is a mess. Tony Khan, I know he loves wrestling and he's got the world's greatest talent roster, but he had a lot of mismatches with smaller guys against big giant guys where the big guys had to win, and that was the story in at least 4 of the matches. Like Swerve Strickland lost to Bobby Lashley, almost in a squash, and it's like, why are you doing this to Swerve? Why not have?
I agree. I mean, Swerve is one of their best young properties, and I mean,
yes, he is, and
Lashley they've given it a run to, so and he never did anything when they gave him his original run. And I don't think.
Okay, so we had that one, and then we had Ospreay lost to his former partner in the the European New Japan group, Kyle. I can't think of his name now. That kid, and then of course Moxley destroyed, as it would be kind of a ridiculous looking if Moxley didn't destroy Orange Cassidy, and that's what happened there with a ton of run-ins at the end. I don't know if Evan, you saw all these run-ins with like Christian Cage and this and that guy that made no sense. But the Roderick Strong MJF match was solid. Mercedes Moné against I can't think of her name. That was Mercedes' best match since she left WWE, and that includes her New Japan stuff. And then of course the Roderick Strong and MJF match was strong, but MJF went over there. So it's all of the bigger guys went over, and after a while it got very repetitive, and it's difficult because it's hard to absorb the finish and the post match when you immediately go smack dab into the next match. It's too many matches, and you have to give it to WWE, who I normally love AEW's pay. They have a far better talent roster that's allowed to do more things. Not that same WWE boring style. It's so predictable. You can call the next spot. It's just they have their set move skills or move sets, and then they just follow it, and they don't veer from that. Like when you see Rey Mysterio go to Lucha Underground or some other group when he was away from WWE, you saw him do all of this stuff, but he's just so held down by that machine. So I would probably give the pay-per-view a B, a strong B. We'll see. I wanted to also mention a guest I'm trying to bring to the show is Jeff Osborne, who has a new book on the artwork of Jerry Lawler. You'll remember, I think it was 1960.
I love Jerry Lawler's art. He is an amazing artist. A lot of people do not realize, he is on a level of anybody that you'd see at Marvel Comics or at DC. He's as good a level. I mean, he's been doing. He was an art major in college.
Started before my voice. Yeah, okay. Before my voice gives out. He started when he was a kid, and he submitted as a young teen to Lance Russell his artwork of some of the wrestlers like Jackie Fargo, and they brought him into the studio. This was 1967, I believe, was the year. But a few people know, I know Evan knows this, that the Norm Keizer magazines in the very early 70s, from early 1971 through maybe late 72, every month in either Wrestling Review or Wrestling Monthly magazine. These are not the quote-unquote after magazines at the time, the Wrestler Inside Wrestling, which gave rise to PWI. These are Norm Keizer's more shoot-like magazines. And Lawler would have 2 to 4 pages every issue of his character. I think it was the Patriot.
Yeah.
Not the Del Wilkes Patriot, but he would go to a different territory every time. He'd come into Los Angeles and he'd have matches with Blassie and Tolis. He'd go to Detroit, he'd battle the Sheik, Ed Farhat, etc. He'd go to New York and he'd battle, whoever the heel was, the lead heel for Vince McMahon Sr. It was amazing. And he's continued it, as we know, and he continues it even having a stroke, all of that. And Jerry's having difficulty with memory and speaking. So he pretty much said, the text I got, not going to be on TV again. So this book is a great way to reintroduce people. Jeff Osborne, who did it with him, is a longtime fan living in Evansville, Indianapolis, but he grew up on Tennessee wrestling, Memphis, Jerry Jarrett and Jerry's predecessor, all of that stuff. And he ended up promoting wrestling himself after he did a newsletter called Cassette Wrestling News, which was not on a newsletter, but it was sort of like a futuristic thing. It was on an actual cassette. And Evan and I would send in our monthly columns. We would just send him cassettes, and he'd splice all this together and send it out. So instead of a printed newsletter, you would hear our voices, and Jeff would be the linking factors, the editor. And Jeff
kind of a low-tech podcast.
Yeah, back in the late 80s through about 93, 94, 95. And he also was the voice of many MMA promotions. He promoted MMA himself, so he's been a constant presence. And he ended up purchasing a lot of Jerry Jarrett's television, including a lot of the Andy Kaufman stuff, the Master 3/4 and 2-inch tapes. So this is a big guy who I think should do his own, auto bio. But I'm going to try to bring him to the show so we can talk about the book and show pictures of it on the screen that he'll give Russ permission to show of Lawler's artwork. So I think that'll be a lot of fun because Jerry Lawler is one of the last remaining territory guys. We lost Terry Funk. We've got Dory Funk and very few others, Les Thatcher, who are able to talk and remember all the great territory stuff in the 60s and 70s, and Lawler is one of those folks. So he's passing a lot of that knowledge to Jeff, who already had an amazing round of knowledge. And I want to say this because I know you guys are going to talk about Bison Mark Smith, who Russ reminded me because I'd forgotten he died. The anniversary of his death was 2 days ago. But Mark Smith, Bison Smith, great human being, great APW talent, who then went and did so many things in pro wrestling Noah in Japan for Mitsuharu Misawa. He also did a lot of stuff in stores in Puerto Rico, and people in the U.S. would remember him, of course, for his time in Ring of Honor, when I think Adam Pearce was booking along with the masked wrestler there. I can't think of his name. I'm having some senior moments lately since I've had my own surgery. Not as serious as Russ's surgery, but
well, actually, yours was more serious.
So
if yours messed up, you died. For us,
what year, Russ? Russ, what year did Bison Smith pass?
2011.
2011. Wow. Anyway, you guys, my voice is pooping out. I'm going to let you guys have your show back. But God bless Mark Smith. And Ev, I'll throw it back to you on the pay-per-view. Ev, what did you think of the pay-per-view? Before I go, the matches at least you saw.
I thought Ospreay and Fletcher was great, and I get tired of they're just spot monkeys, and there's been no good wrestling since the territories and every other cliche. Ospreay's an artist, and you're seeing him in his prime, and the guy's magnificent, and Fletcher was right there with him. I mean, that kid's they made a star out of him yesterday because Ospreay.
Well, not they, but Ospreay made a star out of his best friend.
Yeah, I mean, Ospreay putting him over. Ospreay's one of their top guys, and that elevates Fletcher. Clean pin. It wasn't with 37 guys running in like they usually do. So
I was worried that Don Callis would come in with the screwdriver, and they would pull that shit that they did on Kenny Omega. Now this Ospreay is, I would say he's not the best wrestler in the world. He was, but now Zack Sabre Jr. just captured the New Japan's IWGP Championship. That guy's on another level. And the match that they had, the most recent match, because I saw them wrestle each other, Ospreay and Zack Sabre and Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, but they were too young then. They had a match with both of them fairly in their prime, right before Ospreay joined AEW full time. He'd been making appearances already. And that match, you guys can go online and watch it for free somewhere. It's amazing. It's been on Access Television right after TNA is over with. Tremendous. But Ospreay is, I think he's the lead. He should be the lead babyface, the lead guy with everything put on him in the company. So, perhaps he'll get a win back by going over Moxley and taking the championship, because he should be the lead champion. But I'll let you guys have your show back, and everybody have a great show. Everybody have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Mike.
You are in the world, Canada.
Thanks for coming on,
everybody,
and hope your recovery continues positive.
Feel better.
All right.
Man, I thought it's a mess, but have a great show, you guys.
So,
Okay.
Speaking of the pay-per-view, I have sat at AEW pay-per-views and live. And what happens is they let you in the building like 6 o'clock, and 6:30 or so, the first match comes on, and the last match is wrapping up near midnight. And yesterday they only had 3 matches on the pre-show, but often they'll have 4 or 5. So by the time the night's over, you've seen 12 to 15 matches. And after a while, you're just numb. And what happens is the okay, good, and very good matches, which are the majority, sort of become like a blur. And it takes, like when I was there live, it was Swerve Strickland and Ospreay putting on a great, great match. And that wakes you up.
Everything else just gets lost behind it.
Yeah.
Well, that was the hour match, wasn't that? Was the hour-long match?
Yes.
So after an hour worth of just that, you've seen every spot you can possibly see in an hour-long match. And it's better if they just, say goodnight, everybody, than, pile 5 more matches on top of that.
I don't remember the exact time, but it was a long match. And yesterday the match was 24 minutes. And, yesterday's Ospreay match was really, a year from now, all I'll remember from this show. I mean, nothing else was spectacular. And
that's what I was going to say, is that does it make sense to bury a match like that under all these other matches? Instead, why don't you just say, we're going to put on a couple prelims, maybe 3 matches, then have one really long match that goes half an hour, and have that be the focus of the actual event itself.
It wasn't even the main event.
That's what I'm saying. Is it
Moxley and Cassidy.
Yeah, which is a match you could see on regular TV anytime. Haven't they had that match already? Like 4 or 5 times, pretty much.
I mean, it's a good matchup, but one of AEW's weaknesses is, first of all, they always do the 6, 8, and 10-man matches just to give everybody a spot. But their other weaknesses, you'll have a zillion guys outside the ring, running into the ring. Literally everybody and their mother, because you got Christian Cage and you got the other kid's mother. Everybody runs in like 3/4 of the matches, and it renders it forgettable and almost nonsensical. And I'm an AEW fan, but I say this all the time. 2008 era Ring of Honor, where a lot of these guys were there, like Roderick Strong and Bryan Danielson, and I think it was a superior product to AEW, and that was done on pennies, and these guys are getting paid millions. And
which is why I don't really understand, why don't they try to look back at the sort of things that made Ring of Honor and the original AEW a success, or more watchable, and try to borrow from that rather than just continue on this pathway, which hasn't shown that it can beat the WWE in ratings. I can say, quality or anything like that, but in the bottom line, their number one competition is where the WWE's ratings are. And so you would think that they would want to try to find a way to be better than the WWE and beat their ratings. And obviously, their product isn't good enough to beat the WWE in ratings. And you're never going to get the highest named stars like the WWE gets. But they have a close enough roster to it. But they're not doing as much with their roster like the WWE does. And I never thought I'd say that because I thought anyone could be able to do stuff better than the WWE.
It's a weird mix, AEW. They make huge stars out of guys like MJF and Swerve Strickland, even Orange Cassidy and Hangman Page, and then you have these legitimate all-time great guys like Okada who are neutered, and Jay White, who is huge in Japan. This guy's just another warm body on a card now, and
we're seeing Kenny Omega wanting to go back to New Japan when he could have been, maybe the star of AEW.
He could have ring rust too, and he's also not a kid anymore, and he's getting over some serious issues physically. But I love Kenny Omega, and again, the WWE soldiers and their imaginary WWE versus AEW war. Kenny Omega's just a spot monkey, and Ospreay's just a spot monkey. They're clueless. These guys are artists, but at the same time, I'm not impressed with how they've used Okada anyway, and.
And Bobby Lashley's not a spot monkey. I mean, they have a number of guys on their roster. Moxley's not a spot monkey, and they have guys who are rough dudes and guys who are bruisers and stuff like that. But it's just when you have, and I've always said this, is that if you have 20 matches on your card, you might as well have no matches on your card because nobody can figure out what the real focus main event is and what one you're going to watch that is going to be memorable. Instead, as a booker, you got to say to yourself, this is the match that we really want to put over. Everything else will lead to that match, and we'll make sure we'll protect the main event by making sure guys don't all do the same 460 splash to end the match, or whatever, go through, tables, whatever. The booking has to be close enough for you to be able to, understand that you're not going to do the same moves and everything that you see in every other match on the pay-per-view. That's another thing I find is there's a lot of move repetition, and you should at least, go over the matches and say, okay, well, if everybody's going to do, the clothesline from hell, during each match, well, that's not, or, everyone has a pile driver in it, pile driver spot in it, outside the ring or whatever you want to call. When you have a lot of that, that's where I feel you get real stultifying effects where you just like, oh, okay, well, they're going to do, a headlock shtick or something like that. And each match has that for 5 minutes. You're like, okay, I've seen, or an arm lock, or you're working, a leg spot, and they 3 or 4 of the matches do that. You're like, okay, I already saw somebody work the leg. I already saw someone work the knee. You've got, when you have that many matches on a card, it's hard to get the variety inside each match that makes it compelling to watch. And
well, also what happened was, if the show peaked at Ospreay and Fletcher, and the main event was a pimple on the ass of Ospreay and Fletcher, basically it's a weird vibe. The show is peaking early, and then it's going on the decline.
You don't want that for your main event. You don't want the end for people to be yawning and going, oh, okay, that was a so-so match.
Well, they did like WWE did. WWE will have everybody and their mother run in with the bloodline, and that's what they did in the main event because the match itself didn't touch Ospreay and Fletcher. And it is what it is. It's a mixed bag, and the tickets are not cheap, and they still had a huge crowd. And fans are always saying that, they're on the decline and they can't draw, and then they'll have $1 million gate and a healthy pay-per-view buy and put on I mean, the show itself was a good show. It's just, it's uneven and it's overly long, and that's basically it. Yeah.
And yeah, you don't want to read a murder mystery where the murderer is revealed in like 3/4 of the way through the book, and then the last 25% of the book, they're just kind of talking about the murder. I mean, you want the murder reveal to happen at the very last couple pages, so then that's your conclusion. That's what everything leads to. And I also agree with you that the art of the main event has been lost in a lot of recent big pay-per-view matches and stuff like that. You don't feel like you're being led up to the best match of the night. Sometimes you look back on it and it's like the fourth match was the best one.
The opener. They had CM Punk and McIntyre in that bloodbath a couple of pay-per-views back.
Right.
That was on first, and that was by far the best match of the night. So
that's right. No, you're right.
Weird vibe to the entire night when everything after it,
doesn't over. I totally agree with you. Again, if movies were like that, people would be really upset to see the best scene at the first 5 minutes, and then the rest of it is all just exposition and people talking about how great that move was, how great that scene was. So
let me say one last thing on the pay-per-view.
You got lots of things to say. You can say whatever you want.
I don't want to beat it to death. It's just
no, Mike Leno here. We now we have the ability to actually say something. So
yeah, but it's just one of a zillion pay-per-views. It's not
they blend in. Absolutely. I mean, I'm really at that point where, and it's the same with the WWE, that the pay-per-views, if you ask me to tell, if you put on paper, right now, the last 50 matches that have happened in the WWE, and ask me whether they were on one of the pay-per-views or Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, I wouldn't be able to tell you which one was a little different than the absolute main event, Cody against Roman Reigns. But the other matches in the middle of the card, if you ask me a WrestleMania mid-card match or a SummerSlam mid-card match versus what you'd see on SmackDown or Raw, and you had to make me determine which one of those was on SmackDown, which one was on Raw, and which one was on a pay-per-view, I couldn't tell you. And I wouldn't be able to tell you. I mean, if I did, it would be guess. It wouldn't be because I knew, where it's obvious what they were. It used to be you could look at stuff that was from a SummerSlam or WrestleMania and just go, okay, that is definitely a match they would have on SummerSlam. That is definitely a match from Survivor Series. That is definitely a match from King of the Ring. And you'd be able to and yes, there were fewer of those to have to choose from to think about. But, people remember things like the Bret Hart versus Razor Ramon Arco Arena Royal Rumble main event. People remember that. That was actually a really great match. I remember it because I saw it in person. But I still think that that's something that looks over the time you can look back at and go, okay, well, those were two of the best wrestlers at the time facing each other, and the match really delivered because it was a great match. Now they just blur, and if they were a great match, the WWE or AEW doesn't have the kind of wherewithal to let that match stand by itself. They'll have a rematch 3 nights later, on SmackDown or Raw or what have you, or one of the AEW programs. You'll just replay it because they know a lot of people didn't see it and they want to, relive that greatness a second time. You can't always relive that greatness a second time. Sometimes things are better just standing on their own. And you just say, that was a great match. Let's let people acknowledge it for its greatness. And then we can move on to a different feud we can build into something like this, or something that happened during then, or it's just time to rotate this guy into the blow off has happened. You can rotate in somebody else and start having that kind of variety I think like the NWA was really good at that. I think back in the day, in the 80s and early 90s, I thought that NWA was great at like building a feud up, blowing having the feud have a blow off, a good final match that was really conclusive, and then circulating those guys into other feuds that would still wind up getting heat and getting hot, and building to another thing, and then having a crescendo, and then moving off from that. What's your thoughts, Devin?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Starcade would have the big cage match or whatnot, and yeah. But the most interesting thing I saw today was guy posts that he posts that at one point Lou Thesz said that Harley Race was too acrobatic, and the point being that now you have guys that worship Harley Race going, Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega and these guys are too acrobatic. So wrestling is always going to evolve, and I would say Lou Thesz was great, and Harley Race is great, and Omega and Ospreay are great. And it doesn't have to be either or. I mean, I know some of the old school fans, take pride. Oh, I don't watch that stuff anymore. They're just acrobats, and they're nobody sells, and why not enjoy it for what it is? And I'll do a comparison that people may not be aware of. Back in the day, Louis Armstrong, the trumpeter, for those who don't know, Louis Armstrong.
Walked on the moon is a lot of people.
For the guys who only know wrestling, Louis Armstrong, legendary trumpet player. He said that the bebop guys, quote, were playing Chinese music, an actual, ethnic slur. That's how much he disliked how jazz had evolved. And then, ironically, the bebop players, many of them said that the avant-garde guys that came after, like Ornette Coleman, that wasn't music.
Right.
So, this is human nature. People like what they grew up with and what they're comfortable with, and they don't like dramatic change. And your grandparents, not you literally, the universal you, some of your grandparents probably said rock and roll is the devil's music. And today, their kids are saying, rap music isn't music, and it's like, it's all bullshit. It's all art. And whether you appreciate it or don't appreciate it doesn't negate the value of it.
Yeah, no, it's always going to be some kind of a generational thing, but there's still certain tried and true principles of wrestling that have made it work over the millennia, and things that fans respond to because it's something that works and has proven that it works over the years.
But some of it is nostalgia goggles. I mean, I'll see some mediocre late 80s WWF card, on an old school page, and the fans do a knee-jerk, great card. And I go, no, I had no desire to see Brutus Beefcake wrestle Hulk Hogan. That's not great to me. The fact that it was a long time ago doesn't make it automatically great. I saw back in the 70s, Baron von Raschke and Ivan Putski in Madison Square Garden do like a 15-minute headlock, and it was not great. Just because it's old doesn't make it great either. It's there were great matches then and horrible matches then, just like today. But you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and there's been no good matches, no good wrestling since the territories. That's nonsense.
What was different was the selectivity was a lot less because you had a lot less wrestling to choose from. So you do kind of remember the matches that you saw on the pay-per-views because from back in the day, because you didn't have much else to compare it with. You weren't given this deluge of wrestling that we have now, that you can't pick one out from the other. You don't have any time to really sit and focus on any of the matches you just saw or pay-per-view you just saw, because tomorrow there's there's Raw. It's back on the TV again, and then 3 days later you'll have SmackDown, and AEW will have 2 shows in between then too. So even if you thought something was legendary, by the time it's almost like you're on a conveyor belt.
Yeah,
you're trying to like have a gourmet meal that's coming to you on a conveyor belt, and in between all the on the conveyor belt, the gourmet meal, there's a bunch of lousy meals there. And you still have to do like Lucy from the I Love Lucy show, because the conveyor belt's just constantly churning out all these matches that you're just stuffing them in your mouth, and you don't get a chance to sit there and go, wow, that was a great match, and just sit there and reflect on it, because there's another match coming right down the pipe. And if you don't eat that right away, well, then there'll be another match coming right down the pipe. If you don't eat that, there's another match. And yeah, I think that is kind of the problem, is that, like when WrestleMania ended, WrestleMania 1 ended, and granted, you look back at WrestleMania 1, and a lot of the matches really aren't very good from WrestleMania 1. There were some good ones, but the fact that there wasn't anything on after WrestleMania for like a week, most of the week, made everybody really talk about all of those matches all week long. And that then builds up for the next time you do see Roddy Piper in the ring with Hulk Hogan. You're really excited because you wanted to see where that feud would go, and you had like enough time to reflect on it and talk about it with your friends. And back then we didn't have the internet, so that, maybe you read about it in Pro Wrestling Illustrated or something like that. But that sort of got you into that mode of like, okay, I'm looking forward to what comes next. As opposed to now, where the stuff is just shoved right in your face. As soon as you get done with a match, there's another one pumped right at you, and you can't even sit there and go, wow, that was a cool match, and I loved it when, Ospreay did this move or that move, or I loved it when Kenny Omega did this thing outside the ring or whatever. There isn't any chance for people, except in shows like this where we do discuss it, most of the time people are just like force-fed these other matches so much that what was great kind of is downstream by the time you've absorbed like 10 other crappy matches. I think that's a problem too, is that there's just no ability to reflect on something that you just saw.
You have to treat it almost like a smorgasbord, where you just find the great matches, and it could be from word of mouth or the wrestling community or whatnot. And when everybody says, quote unquote, everybody says, Fletcher and Ospreay are great, there's something to it, and you savor that, and you don't need to watch anything and everything. You don't need to watch every hour of AEW and WWE TV. Coming to New York in the next 4 to 5 weeks, you have, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, you have MLW, GCW, Progress from England is coming in, Defy Wrestling, which is a top indie, Ring of Honor is at the Hammerstein again, AEW is running 2 shows at the Hammerstein, WWE at Madison Square Garden. There's a group called HOG who they're bringing in the Hardys as a tag team. It's almost like every night of the week there's a major live card, and I don't know what people are getting thousands and thousands of dollars to see everything. Or, odds are out of all of these shows, I'll go to 1 or 2. I'm not going to go to 20 of them. And, but it's like, it's almost overkill. It's great that wrestling's in a boom cycle, but at some point,
you're going to kill that golden goose.
Yeah. There's only so much quote unquote wrestling dollars that you have. And if you go to WWE at Madison Square Garden, the tickets start at $63 on top. So
and here they were $75, and yeah, no, I'm with you on that. But speaking of Ring of Honor, let's take a few minutes out to talk about the life and times of Mark Smith. I know, maybe people outside of this program are tired of hearing me talk about Mark Smith. I got to say one thing, tough, because Mark Smith meant a lot to me. And 13 years ago on the 22nd was when he died at age 41. And it's incredibly sad to me that, like, I'm getting to the point where I've now not known Mark. He's been gone longer than the time that I knew him. And his impact on my life and the passing that he had affects me every day. And it always will. And he will always be a special part of my life because of the person that he was and the person that he strove to be. He was a noble, honest, hardworking, clean a wrestler that really, just the talent that he brought with him to the ring is something that can never be measured. And I wished he had been a bigger star in the WWE, but he made his life through being a wrestler, and there's very few people who have been able to pull that off. And he never lived his life saying, I wish I could have been a main eventer in the WWE, or that I should have been champion of the WWE or NWA or WCW or what have you, at the time that he was wrestling. He never looked back and said, I should have been bigger than I was. Mark Smith was the kind of person that enjoyed and appreciated the ability to get out to the ring in every fed he was ever in. And I'm not sure people understand about what it's like to have that level of not appreciation, but level of satisfaction of what you're able to accomplish, rather than living your life saying, I need more, I need more, I need more. I can't possibly be happy unless I'm absolutely the best in the entire world and everybody is at my feet. And that was a very special thing to work with a guy like that, because that's a guy that you can really work with and you can help build, rather than a guy that feels that he's already complete and it just takes the rest of the world the time to notice how great he is. Mark never felt that way. He never felt the world owed him attention. And you just don't find people like that anywhere in life, whether it's in wrestling or in a corporation or anything like that. I have always said that if King Arthur had looked for knights of the Round Table in modern day, America, I believe he would have chosen Mark Smith as someone on the Round Table. Your thoughts?
I saw Mark Smith live with Ring of Honor in New York, and I was very impressed. And I'm old school and jaded and have seen, quote unquote, everybody. And for a big guy, he could wrestle, he could move, he could do it all. He was a total package, and with charisma to boot. And I was very impressed, and I wish I had seen him more. I only saw him a few times in New York, and but I was always very impressed. And yeah, I've had similar experience with wrestling friends who are gone way too soon. And yeah, it's you go up and down.
A little bit last week about Johnny Valiant.
Yeah, Johnny Valiant, Nikolai, Tiger Khan, all dear friends, and many, many others. Lanny Poffo, it's like I could do a whole show just talking about dead friends.
Yeah, we have, unfortunately.
No, I'm saying I could do a laundry list of guys who, slept on my couch who are no longer here. And you go up and down those highways and they talk about their dreams and, their frustrations and their pain. And, it's you bond and it's
doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. That there's something about the wrestlers that we know in our lives. And yeah, we have other people that we know that have also died. It's not as if those people are less important than the wrestlers that we know. But to me, the wrestlers that I work with, when they do go, there's an inexorable sadness of losing someone that is more like a family member than the people that I've just otherwise associated with, like in, say, college or high school or what have you.
Well, you go up and down those highways, hours and hours, and you're sitting at that pancake house 2 a.m. or whatnot, and you're bonding, and Tiger Khan, who worked for the Hearts up in Calgary and got a WWE tryout and etc. so on, had a degree of success in wrestling, not quite what Bison Smith had, but he did have a degree of success, wrestled tons of top WWE stars on indies and such in main events. And yeah, like he would say, Evan, when I make it in WWE, I'm going to take you along for the ride. And, and it never happened. It never happened. And it's, the dreams die with them, so, and he was gone at 33, which is brutal. So, yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I've unfortunately lived it. And I've said to people, and they look at me oddly, I said, the worst day of my life, the single worst day of my life was the day that Tiger died. And they'll go, well, what about your dad? What about your mom? And I said, well, they lived the full life. My mother was 83, and it's a different beast than dying before you lived the life you should have, been granted. And yeah, man, it's not easy. So
yeah, I also lost my mom, which is 58, about 59.
My dad was 57, but again, yeah. 57 is still a lot better than 33,
or 41. Yeah. No, it's really that sort of thing when you see that loss of potential, and knowing that they could have been, they were still on the verge of greatness when their time runs out. Is
and then you have the opposite side of it. Like Lanny and Nikolai were health nuts. And when I say that, I don't mean any disrespect.
No, my mom was too. My mom was too. She was really.
And I still say that the quote unquote wrestling life, being on the road every day, smoke-filled arenas, different time zones, it's just not healthy. And Lanny and Nikolai, I thought they would live to a ripe old age, and neither did. So,
right. And Mark had a time bomb inside of him with a faulty heart valve that killed his grandfather at about the same age as when he died. And he always felt like there was that ticking time bomb inside of him, but there's nothing you can do about it. You can't just, go to the, emergency ward and have him put in a new heart valve. It's just, you either, get a heart transplant while you're in your 40s when you don't have any sign of anything wrong, or you just roll the dice. And I think Mark had always felt that, like, that time bomb could go off inside of him. And instead of, being paranoid about it, he used it to motivate him to try to accomplish as much as he could in the short time that he had. And that's both, noble and admirable, at the same time being incredibly tragic and hard to for the rest of us on the outside to look in. It makes you miss him even more, because you do see a lot of people in this lifetime, not, wrestlers necessarily, but other people in your life that check out while they're young, and they just feel that they can't accomplish anything. And so they just slide the rest of the way through life and don't make the attempt to do anything huge, because they figure, what's the difference? Why bother? And it makes it harder. And those people wind up living to, age 95, right? Like the ones that strive so hard and have such drive, like, again, Virgil Flynn is another good example of a guy who died in his, early 40s, or I think he was 39 when he died. because of just an aneurysm that he had in his brain. Nothing you can do about that. You can't take tests or put a dipstick in your ear and find out that you're going to have a brain tumor. Nobody knows about those things. And it just, to me, has always been, my mom's own father died of a brain tumor when she was 11 years old. So this like taken before your time thing in my life is a constant story that keeps getting retold and retold and retold and retold. And sometimes, look, I destroyed my shoulder falling off my retaining wall, but if I fell on my neck or my head, you'd be hearing about me in a memorial show, and so it is one of those things too. You'd say to yourself, why are you still around when all these other guys that, are in perfect shape and worked so hard, they're still alive, they're gone, but I'm still here. And, I know that you can get all philosophical about God and fate and destiny and all that, which I'm not really a big believer in. So it makes a bigger question, like why you're around when other people
Patton Oswalt, the comedian, did a stand-up special, and his wife died young, and
tragically
in her 50s, I believe.
Yes.
And the punchline, which was very powerful, it wasn't meant to be funny. She said to him, "It's all random. It's all random." So we're talking today, and I could live to 104, or I could drop dead tomorrow. You don't know. You just don't know. So
I'm not ready to do another memorial show, so please don't.
No, I mean, I'm just saying it's about a week ago. I'll tell you a funny story. I was crossing a street, which was not far from where I live, and a car was coming down the wrong way on a one-way street. So I'm crossing, and this car's heading towards me. So obviously, I'm looking at the car, and I'm like pointing at the sign that's one way. But I'm so fixated on this guy like not running me over, I'm forgetting that the other cars are coming the other direction. So this guy missed me by like inches, and I'm like, that came down to inches. That guy was going fast, and I was looking the wrong way for obvious reasons.
But you weren't looking the wrong way. He was driving the wrong way.
Yeah, but meanwhile, I'm forgetting about the other guys.
Yeah.
So
Gosh.
my point being, I'm here laughing a week or two later, but you could have been doing my memorial. So it is all random. That's inches. There's been stories in New York where people are sitting in their apartment and idiots are shooting at each other. The bullet goes through the first floor window. The guy's in his apartment.
Yeah.
And kills them.
Absolutely. No, we had horrendous flooding here just recently here in California. A couple of people died from it,
and the next door neighbor's absolutely fine. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have a couple minutes left. I did want to end on a positive note because we have Thanksgiving coming up just in a couple days. And I know this is kind of hitting you completely random because I didn't prep you for this question. But what in wrestling are you thankful for? Give it a sec and then tell me what you think.
I'm thankful for the friends I've made, you and Mike included. Some of my dearest, closest friends I've met through wrestling. I'm grateful for the places wrestling has taken me. I tell people the best day of my life was the New York Film Festival when they screened The Wrestler, and we got a standing ovation, and we walked out and there's paparazzi and they're, interviewing me and taking pictures. And I'm like, this isn't like,
And how about the fact that after the fact, The Wrestler has been designated as maybe the best wrestling film ever made. I mean, a lot of people say it's one of the best.
Even more important, it's been designated one of the greatest sports films ever made, and one of the greatest.
You made art.
Thank you. And
as
one of the
always said.
greatest performances ever made. You know, Mickey Rourke won the Golden Globe for that and was nominated for the Oscar. And I think he should have won, but
I agree. But you helped create art, lasting, living art that, you know, that goes beyond you and your generation. It's something that people will be watching The Wrestler 50 years from now, 100 years from now. I guarantee it. People will be watching that movie.
oh, people still watch silent films. So yeah, 100
Right.
years later.
Oh, anyone that's a wrestling fan will work their way over to The Wrestler. Just like if you're really a huge fan of wrestling, you'll wind up seeing Beyond the Mat. You know, it will make its way into your consciousness and into your library because, you know, you seek those things out. And I'm amazingly proud that, you know, I was associated with Beyond the Mat, even though they kind of slammed APW. The fact that that in itself is also kind of a work of art in its own way and stands out on its own is an amazing thing. So, you know, I'm very proud to be associated with you, Evan. I just sent you a message, you know, about another wrestling group that I was in where they, on Facebook, where they brought up, you know, this one guy said, hey, have you seen 350 Days? Because somebody mentioned about Bret Hart. And then the guy said, hey, have you seen 350 Days? And the guy said, there's some really priceless road stories about Bret Hart in there. And I mean, this was completely unsolicited. This was somebody who I had no idea had ever seen 350 Days.
Well, we're proud of that also. And I think it's one of the best wrestling documentaries ever made. And, you know,
You made art again. You made art twice in your life that people will look to.
Well, but the thing is, you never want to rest on your laurels, and we're going to create more books and more movies and hopefully something else. And it doesn't have to always be wrestling related. We'll hit also, but yeah, it's funny. You always hear movies today being judged by its box office. And I don't think that's what a film should be judged by. I think a film should be judged by the quality and will it survive? Will it last? There's some great indie filmmakers, Kelly Reichardt and Sean Baker, and yeah, Darren Aronofsky, of course, and others who are making great films. And you know, not all of them are wealthy or whatnot. It's Sean Baker made a movie on $10,000. You know, Sean Baker. You know, look him up. I mean, his masterpiece was the Florida Project, which is about poor kids living in a project, and he based it on the Little Rascals. And he based these kids are like having fun, and their parents are like junkies, and they're all screwed up, and you know they're turning tricks and stuff, and these kids are playing in the project, and it's devastating. This film, devastating, but it's a great film, and he shot it on nothing. So Kelly Reichardt teaches film at a university, I mean, because she's not making fortunes of money. And there's a film she made called Wendy and Lucy with Michelle Williams.
Yeah, you mentioned that over.
Oh my God, I think it's the best film of this century, along with the Florida Project. Basically, she's broke. All she has is her car and her dog.
Yeah.
And the car breaks down, and it sets off a chain of events, and it's absolutely devastating, and it's a great film.
I know. I have to get to watch something like that without wanting to.
So what I would like to do, and I'm not free to talk about it, but we will have a film being released in 2025. But what I want to do is self-finance or on a very low budget, do quality films where you're not going to lose your house or whatnot. And, you know, it's doable today if you know what you're doing and you have the technology. we did a film called Teresa Sario Alive Again with the full cooperation of the U.S. military. We interviewed former POWs and wounded warriors. And Gary Sinise is in it. I mean, and we shot it on $8,000. It's an indie, a no-budget indie. And the Wrestling Then and Now documentary we did, it doesn't touch The Wrestler or 350 Days, but we shot it on like $1,000. And there's Nikolai, and there's Killer Kowalski, Don Arnold. All my friends are in it, and they're all gone. Tiger's in it. So, it's meaningful to me. And with the technology today, the streaming, we got thousands and thousands of people that watch it, and it generates very little money, but it's not even about the money. You're preserving your friends on film.
And that's what I'm thankful for. I mean, I'm thankful for the ability to do the show over 4 years. We'll be moving into 5 years next year. Wow. I'm thankful for the friends that I've made through this show. There's a number of people that I never would have met in real life if we hadn't done this show, and yet they're friends of mine now, like guys like Jonathan and my friend Wayne Matai and Kelly Slaughter, and a lot of even Solomon Chertok, who was on the show a couple weeks ago.
Solomon's a good guy. He's a real supporter of the arts.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, these are people that I would have never met just hanging out in my house, just by myself here, or with my family here in Novato, California. The fact is that this show allowed me to extend my circle, and I wouldn't have this show if it wasn't for you, but I also wouldn't have this show if it wasn't for the fans that did tune in. Yes, we don't have 1 million people clicking on it every week. There's always a good 40 to 50 people who check in on the show every week, and that the show matters to them. And the fact that this show matters to 50 people or whatever, or 100 people, matters to me, the people that do watch. And so I don't take a lot of time to thank the listeners and thank the watchers of the show, but I wanted to take a second out to thank them. And I know that you thank them too. And rather than let the show drag on and on, I think we'll wrap up today. But, it's a special time for me because of the holidays, and I had my shoulder worked on, and I'm rehabbing it, and I'm just spending a lot of time, in thought and retrospective things, because, when you're in the hospital, when you come out of the hospital, you have nothing to do but to sit around and rehab things. And my friendship with you over the years is something that has always meant a lot. And to Mike,
same here,
people who are here. And so, I'm glad that we can keep doing this show, and that this show still means a lot to you, and it means a lot to me, and it means a lot to the people who listen. And I wanted to thank everyone for that. And I hope everybody has a great holiday, and we'll see everybody next week.
Let me just add one quick thing. If you wake up in the morning and you open your eyes and you can see, be thankful. A lot of people are blind. If you wake up in the morning and you can walk to the bathroom or the kitchen, be grateful. A lot of people can't walk, okay? If your mind is clear, there's a lot of people who have serious mental issues. If you wake up in the morning and you smell the air, you're doing better than a lot of people. Be thankful. And a buddy of mine, Bobby Patterson, great R&B singer, he said to us the other day, we were on the phone with him, he goes, I'm walking on the dirt's not walking on me.
That's
it in a nutshell.
That's a good point. All right, everyone. Evan, why don't you plug your pages?
Yeah, check out Evan Ginsberg's Old School Wrestling Memories. Check out 350 Days. Check out Wrestling Then and Now, the documentary. Yours truly, the senior editor over at ProWrestlingStories.com. And support indie everything, indie film, indie music, indie wrestling. WWE could live without your...
the billions of dollars that they already get. I agree. Thank you so much for being there this week. Have a great holiday with you and your wife, and we'll see you all next week. Good night, everyone.